Ben Chon from ENTC will present the 5GASP NetApp certification process. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, everyone. I assume that you can hear me and get my screen. Am I correct? So if yes, I will start to share that. Okay, so welcome to our third online webinar. My name is Ben Shaw from ENTC. ENTC means that Advanced European Network Testing Center, and we are focused on the testing and the validations. So the topic today, what I will share with you and discuss with you, of course, it is our certification. So now let's start. So firstly, as we know that 5G gives us a lot of this new challenge and the services to make that life quality better, because 5G, as we always know that, it can give us a high throughput and also the low latencies and multiple or height of that devices connection at the same time. So that's why we need to develop the new applications for the new services based on 5G. But at the same time, we also meet some of that dilemmas that is from the different partners, because as we see that, as that SME, you're very nice and good, as we know that, for the software design and development. Of course, you are also good for the testing of the white box test of your applications, and also to do some of that smoke testing, unit testing, that kind of things. But maybe you didn't get enough experience and time to do the full testing and validation based on our end-to-end solutions, and to do some more challenging testing and validation, for example, like load test, long-time testing, to make sure your net application and the services can be running stably for a long time in our global critical network, cloud-based network. So at the same time, as the network operators, they are very good about that instructions and also operations of the network to give you the good quality of the service. But that means as a 5G get a lot of these new services and applications, so they will get a lot of that kind of net applications to be validated and also to be created and fully tested at the same time. It will be multiple that testing needed at the same time. So 5GSP, as a new project under our 5G PPP, we want to unlock that kind of that dilemmas to create one automated 5GSP certification, what we call that 5GSPC, that will can help us to quickly to do all of that kind of that certification automatically. So that means when you upload your devices in our certificated test beds, that kind of the testing and the certification and the certification, it can be fully automated done, and then later you will get that certificate on our public marketing network portal to share that your certification, and also give you the chance for the showcase of your net application, and also which kind of the testing you already done on our testbed. Of course, on this portal, it will be share a lot of this information about our certificated testbed, so that kind of the testbed equipment and the services can be copied and moved to the real cloud network to support the service can be easily developed. So now, what's 5G certification, 5GSP certification? So in our case, we define that three of that rules for that kind of the certificates. The first part of that, it is net application. So that means some of that vendors, as the developer, you want to certificate your net application and the services in one of that SDKed testbed. So the second part of that is our isolated testbed. That kind of the testbed already be fully defined and tested that before when your application have been loaded. And almost the third kind of that test bed in our project, it is from some network vendors. So the third part of that, it is our certification applications. So this is one of that high quality technology team. We will give you that certificates, and also, of course, during certain kind of the certification, it's there's questions or certain kind of the support needed that we will very welcome to do that. Currently, in our project, we already get 11 net applications in plan to be tested, and we are open for the third part of that net applications. So that means it's very welcome if you want to onboarding and test your net applications on our project based on our testing pipeline in one of our test beds. So as I mentioned that here, we already got 6 of that test beds located all over this EU. Someone is in UK, someone it is in Greece, Spain, and also Romania. So you can select 1 or 2 of these test beds for the test of your application. So here, yeah, this is the full workflow of that certification process. It will be used to certificate your net application. Of course, I know that when you see such kind of that big flows, it's a little bit confused, but don't worry. I will speak that to the different use cases in the coming slides so that you can easily to understand in each of these cases, which kind of the things you nearly need to be followed. So now let's go to check our use cases. Here we define that 6 of the use cases. The first one is that for the certification requirement. That means as the network application provider or developer, you want to certificate your development on our platform. So in such kind of the case, there's some of that sub workflows which will be shared in the coming slides. And so let's focus on the use cases. The next use case is that, of course, your net application for the certification need to be fully tested automatically. So how to test that, and during the testing, which kind of the things you will be meet and which kind of the support we need, it will be glad to share in slides 8. Next one is that for the certification issues. So that means after this certification testing, you will get the test reports and you will get your certificate. Of course, you get the chance to showcase your certification on our public network portal. So next one is that, of course, during the testing, we will meet some of that issues. Such kind of issue, sometimes it's from your net application, sometimes maybe from the instructions. So if some of the issue happened, what do we need to do? We will discuss that later in slide 10. Slide 10. And for the next use case is that in case if the issue found it, but it's not very clear, this kind of the issue, it is linked to our net application, or it is some of the issue to the instructions. Of course, not all of these issues can be easily to define that in one part of there. So in such kind of the case, we need the certification arbitration. So our office, it will be able to define that such kind of that case. It is a real issue, or this issue linked to the test bed or linked to our applications. And finally, there's the other one of the cases that in case you already get one of the certificates. Of course, in our 5G ASP certification, under that, you will get the different type of the certificates. We define 3 different levels of the certificates. You can get one layer of this one. So later, if you want to retest that and get the higher quality or the whole result of this certificate, you can ask for the recertification. Here, I will show you how to do that. So let's go do that one by one. Firstly, for the certification requirement. So when you try to require that to do the certificate of your net applications, of course, you need to send the requirement to our office to start for your certification. And after that, we will ask you to give us enough documentation about your net applications. Of course, there are a lot of these templates that will be shared to you. You need to fit that to give us enough information so that we know your net application is ready to be tested and certificated. So after that, when we get this documentation, our office, it will check that it is enough or not. If it is enough, you can select on our portal for one of the test bed or two even sometimes. If you need to do that cross test bed testing, you can select the test bed which one you want to use for your certification. So after that, after you selected the test bed, you need to submit your softwares and all of that kind of testing requirements or some special requirements to our test bed. This kind of the testing materials need to be submitted to the test bed. After that, we will start for the testing. Of course, when the testing is finished, you will get your certificate. So, let's go into for the testing. So for the testing, that after the test materials you already submitted to our test bed, one of them, and then the test bed guys, it will check their instruction and to get that available test slots and then share that to you so that you will be informed, okay, in which kind of the slots the test bed it is ready for your testing. You can select one of them. When you proved that test slots, so we will start for the testing. And of course, during that kind of test, we need your full support to get some of that clear requirement of your testing. And also, in case some of the issue happened, you can do the quick troubleshooting. So when the test it is running, of course, some of that results included the system logs, also kind of the details, it will be stored in one of our local database. So when all of this testing it is finished, our test bed guys, it will check the result and to prove that everything is fine or not. So in case if there's some of that issue happens, of course, we will go into the debug and troubleshooting phases. If everything is fine, okay, the test results, it will be reported to our office to check that for you and be ready for your certificate. So after the testing, when the test bed submitted the test reports and the logs, detailed that kind of things to our office, we will check that to make sure all of that kind of the testing is correctly marked and get that the correct the results to match our KPI and requirements. If yes, that means we are ready to issue one level of this certificate to you. Currently, we define 3 different layouts of this certificate. You can get that private, civil, or good. And later I will share you what's the really requirement for each level of the certificate. So this kind of that certificate, it will be published on our 5GSP Net Application Story public marketing portal. And on this portal, you have the capabilities and you have the opportunity to share, to do the showcase of your net application on the marketing place, so that some of that the big vendors or the critical network, commercial network service provider can pick that and then to easily to develop your application and services on their network. So now let's go into check this debugging flow. That means some of the issue happened. So during this testing, the owner of the test, it is our test bed. So when the test bed during the test found some of the issues, it will be do the first check to make sure that kind of the issue it is linked to the instruction to our test bed, or it is some of the issues we believe that should be linked to your net application. So in such kind of the case, our test bed, it will be report the issues to you, to the net developer. In such kind of the case, you need to firstly to check that it is the real issue to your net application or not. If it is not, so that means test bed guys believe it is your issue, but you are not, you don't think so. So we need to go into the next flow for the certification attribution. But if you find that this is the issue, this should be linked to your net application, and then need you to do troubleshooting. So next slide, when the issue is fixed, you need to update for your test materials, also sometimes for the new documentations to our test bed to continue the testing. But the other case is that if we found the issues and you believe that issue linked to, maybe linked to our applications, but in such kind of a case, after the long time of the troubleshooting, you cannot fix this issue, what will happen? That's not a big problem. You just report to our office that, yeah, we know this is an issue, but we cannot fix that at this moment. So that means we need to go into our certification issue flows, because we already defined 3 different levels of that certificate. So maybe we'll meet one of them. So now let's check the details of our certification upstream in case that some of that issues happened, but were not very clear. It's linked to which kind of the part, to the test bed of our instruction, or it is linked to your net applications. So in such kind of the case, our office, it will be checked the test reports, because as we mentioned that before during the testing, in our local database, it will be stored and kept all such kind of that system logs, testing results, tracing everything about such kind of things. So later, our test bed, it will be report all of such kind of details to our office to check that such kind of things, it is really linked to which part. So in this of the case, our certification should to give you officially one of these kind of that result. So neither it will be the net application issues linked to your net application. So that means you need to do the troubleshooting. All these kind of the issues, it's linked or maybe from our test bed of the instruction or some of that wrong configuration for the services, for example, like the slice. And of course, there is the other possibility is that this is not the issue, or it is some of the issue, but it's not the issue that when it impacted our service and impacted to our certification process. So finally, the result, it will be published on the portal, not only to you, for all of the guys, to our net application and also the task bed, so that all of the guys know what's the result. And when we agree to that, we can continue for next workflow. So now let's go into one of the cases that you already get the certificate, that you want to get the other one. Of course, for example, if you get the civil liability certificate, you want to go to the gold line. So in that kind of a case, you can request for the real certificate. The real certificate that it is that the shorted and simplified workflow based on our full process. So in this case, you just need to submit it for the real certification request to our office, and then we will check that which kind of that documentation and the results you already submitted that before. And then we will just ask you to give some of the update. When it is approved, so you can select the test bed. Of course, in that kind of a case, you can select the same test bed what you want to certificate your applications because you already submitted your software and tools configurations before to this test bed. So when the test materials are already fully submitted to the test bed, we continue to do the testing. And then meet the high level of the certificate, we issue that and publish that the new certificate on our 5G ASP net application story public marketing web portal. So yeah, all of these use cases and something that until now you get at least the high level, the ideas, which kind of the things you need to do for the certification on our 5G ASP certificated platform. So here I will clear to show you which kind of or which level of the certificate you can get in our platform. So we already defined two different of that criteria. One is the initial one is that expanded. So yeah, the initial one, that means all of that, the basic function or the KPI requirement from the specifications like 3GPP and ITUT, and also the other that SOs. So that means such kind of things, your net application, it is mandatory to be followed, fully followed. So this is what clear to mention that if after the testing or the certificate or the validation, your net application cannot fully pass this initial one, you will not get any of the certification from our process or the platform in 5G ASP project. But if you can get at least to fully pass that initial one, you will get that ground level of this certificate. And you will get that several of the goals of that certificate based on the testing, how many % of the test cases you can pass based on our expanded critical cases. So that means later, if you check that online, I will share with some of the links. You can check our deliverables in 5G ASP project. We are defining clearly what many of net applications, what you have to be followed, and we will give you the clear of the list for each kind of this testing. So that you can check that offline, which kind of the testing you want and which kind of that certificate you are expected to be get it from our project. So now let me share you some of that online self-help documentations, what you can get from our project. Of course, here I just share you some of that ideas about the certification in our 5G ASP project. If you want to get more detail to that, you can check that online by yourself. The first one is that we already clearly defined the certification guidelines. So the kind of that documentation, you can check that online. And also where I shared that today, just to give you some of the high level of the process and the workflows, you can check it online with more details. And it is very welcome if you get any of the questions, but you didn't get enough time or chance to ask it here today. You can go into our online deliverable forums to just submit your questions. We will check that and give you the responses as early as possible. So thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Ben. And we are basically on time, just a few minutes. So we have room for questions. I would, while you think about writing a question for Ben, I will go back to questions for Rudolf. And one question that was not answered previously was about, I will read the question by George. So you mentioned issues with the terminals. In fact, if the network switches to local operation, will the local network not take control of devices within range? This was actually answered by Yanis in the chat, but if you'd like to say something, Rudolf, to add up.
Well, actually, as Yanis has written, in that case, so when we switch to the isolated operation, we can also apply access class bearings. So at the end, only the users with the devices with the USIMs having the appropriate access class will try to connect to the G-Node B. So yeah, it's let's say kind of under control. But of course, those users which don't have the USIMs with the appropriate identity will, of course, not be able to attach to the network when working in an isolated mode.
Gregor also asked us if there is anything special that needs to be supported on the G-Node B in order to support like CN resilience.
Well, regarding the switching from the to the isolated operation, so when we switch the core network, nothing special than mentioned is necessary. So the G-Node B components need to detect whether the macro or public core network is accessible or not, and then it needs to switch to the appropriate core network. It also needs to switch the ID, PLM and ID, and as said, if required, access class bearings can be also applied. But otherwise, all the other like provisioning of the user, providing the IP address to the user, authorization and authentication of the user, these are functions that are carried out by the core network, no matter this is a macro or a local core network.
Thank you, Rudolf. We still don't have any questions for Ben, so I will ask one question for Ben. On the 5GASP certification process, what are the main benefits for me as an SME or a freelance developer working in this area? What are my main benefits of certifying my application?
Okay, so good question. There are, from my view, at least you get two of the benefits from our certification platform. The first one is that we can give you some more expertise testing real what you cannot do in your level. For example, as I mentioned that before, you can do a lot of this unit testing and also a lot of this smoke testing of such kind of things by yourself in this level. But in our specification platform, we will offer you some more of the testing for the end-to-end test. For example, we will plan to use a UE connected to from the radio side from that 5G core, and also go to the net application servers, so that you can get the end-to-end scenarios to be sure in the real network which kind of the things you can meet for your net application. This is the first thing. The second one is that, okay, as we know that 5G define a lot of these new technologies, that's very good, but at the same time, we will get a lot of this challenged based on the different type of that instructions and also the services in 5G system. For example, 5G core is not one of that servers. There are very complex set of services, APIs linked to each other. So we provide you one of that, or even more of that test device. They already be certificated that, so that you know when you're trying to run an AI application or services in the real network, which kind of the things you need. For example, we will give you that open APIs this kind of the APIs, it will be followed also for the network providers, so that you can ensure the services what you assume that it can fully run it perfectly later in the commercial cloud network. And as a finally of that, when you get a certificate from our site, we publish that in our marketing platform web portals. So kind of the web portal, it's not only involved for the net application of the developers, and also a lot of our top vendors like BT, Vodafone, Orange, so the guys can know, okay, which kind of the things you already touched and certificate to that. So it can be more easier for the service providers to pick up that kind of the net applications you already certificated that. So the guys knows, okay, you are already been certificated by the third part of that standard platform. That's all from my side.